Hi, I'm Shreya Srivastav, VP HR at IGT Solutions. I'm very excited to host this fireside chat series called Women in Technology. In this series, we will have candid conversation with women leaders from IGT Solutions, our partners, and broader industry. Together, we will learn and get insights from their inspiring careers to excel and thrive in the tech industry. To kick off this series, who would be a better guest than our CEO, Katie Stein? Katie is a transformational business leader with over 2 decades of experience. She has guided several startups, has had a thriving career in leading strategy consulting firms, and have driven several Fortune 500 companies to success. Outside the boardroom, Katie is a proud mom of 2, a fitness enthusiast, and a true New Yorker. Let's have a chat with Katie. So, welcome, Katie. Very excited to have you today.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. So, let's dive right in. Katie, we are in 2025. Do you think a forum like Women in Tech is still important? It's relevant?
So Shreya, I absolutely think it's important. It's why we're leading on this discussion here at IGT Solutions. And why do I think it's important? A few things. First, women are still very underrepresented in tech.
Right.
And so we have to do our best as IGT Solutions and a broader industry to bridge that. But I think now more than ever, as the skill set is advancing,
Right.
and we know there's a skills deficit, finding ways to make a more inclusive community for all genders to come together is absolutely critical.
Correct. Absolutely. Can't agree more, Katie. Thank you. What we'll do, Katie, we'll try to rewind a little bit and let's go through your journey, Katie as a little girl and then growing up. I'm quite keen to know if technology or science was always an interest, or was there a turning point where you decided that this is the industry I would like to go?
Yeah, it's funny looking back. I don't know that as a young child, technology or science were top of mind for me. Actually, it's ironic that I work at IGT Solutions now, which has such a strong travel and transportation footprint,
Right.
because I actually at one point thought I wanted to be a flight attendant. It seems so glamorous to travel the world and see all these countries, but I think there is a thread from my early childhood that has taken me to technology, which is, as you know, you've been driving the values
Right.
initiative within IGT, and curiosity was always at the forefront of my childhood. So I've always asked why. Why does it have to work this way? Why can't we improve it? And I think of technology innovation as really that thread, which is how can we improve the processes that we're running, the operations that we drive, using more and more enablement. And with the pace of technology, I think now ever more is a really important time for us to lean into that.
Absolutely. I do remember you made this point in one of our town halls also that we do regularly, and all of us, we were so interested to hear your perspective of how you have been this curious person all along, and now it is our cultural value and we hold it so personally. So it's excellent. Thanks for that insight.
Thanks for all your
Katie.
work on it.
Let's go further in your journey, Katie, in your career. While you were holding these several leadership positions, I also would like you to touch upon the gender stereotypes which are there in every culture, I would say. So have you had to face any such stereotype being a career woman and in the family or in the society? Just quite curious to know on that.
Yeah. And I would encourage anyone who's watching this, there's a fabulous Black woman leader named Carla Harris. She was at Morgan Stanley. She was the vice chair for many years. And I think she summarizes this really well in a podcast that I listened to, where she talked about sort of your brand and your identity. And I think the challenge for many women in tech, and more broadly than tech, is that many people perceive you, and especially if you've been at a company for a while or in a community for a while, as how they've known you. And I think as women mature in their leadership journey, what got us to where we were, sometimes we have to shift that position. And she talks about how even though she was tough, she wasn't seen as tough, because as she'd grown up in Morgan Stanley, she was seen as smart, she was seen as a go-getter. And when it came time to be promoted to the utmost ranks, the real question was, is she tough enough? And some of that is a gender bias. And so she talks in this podcast about how she really intentionally then brought that attribute of herself out. You know, if someone said, hey, could you help the team review something? She'd say, well, I can, but I'm pretty tough. You know, are they ready for it? And by being intentional about making sure that people understood the full self, her authentic self, the whole person that she was,
Right.
she was able to break through that identity and show everyone what her potential was. And I think that's something everyone can take, and I do. I think about, hey, how do people think of me because they've known me, and who do I want to be known as? Because those are also skills and attributes I have. And I think that's important for all women, but especially in a field like tech.
Right, right. Very, very interesting. I think I'm going to read about her
Yeah,
more.
she's someone I admire greatly.
Yeah. I'll do that. Kitty, if we stay on this a little bit more, and if you could share any personal experience that you have, in a meeting, in a discussion, or in a workplace where you felt that, okay, being a woman in the room was kind of discriminated, if it's a hard word, but somewhere you felt that you need to make sure that your voice is heard growing up in the career. Was there any recall of an incident?
Maybe I'll give you two very different examples.
Sure.
And the first, I think, is very personal, and I'm sure many women have encountered this, which is actually our own bias against ourselves, the way that we hold ourselves back because we feel guilty for not being there for our children, or we feel that we have to be super women.
Yeah.
And the reality is we all know that's very, very hard. And I've told this story many times at IGT, which is I was in London on a work meeting, and my children were very, very young. My son was still in a stroller, and I always get a little emotional when I tell the story, but there was a snowstorm in New York City. And my husband was traveling, and the person who was caring for my children was struggling to pick up both children from their separate schools because my baby was quite young, and I was in London and there was nothing I could do. And someone reached out to me and said, hey, I'll pick up Lucy, I'll bring her home. And I remember in that moment thinking, this is what we have to get by, which is a community.
Correct.
It's the network that we build. It's the people who support us. It's the only way to balance the constraints and the expectations on both sides. And after the fact, this woman who picked up my daughter, who generously offered that, said to me, the whole way home, Lucy wasn't asking, where were you? She wasn't upset that you weren't there. She was saying, my mom has this really big job and I'm really proud of her. And I think that's what that resilience and pride that we have in our work, if that shines through to our families and our communities, then everyone leans in to help. And that's a really important learning lesson for me, was not to feel badly or guilty, but to actually leverage my network and to understand that what I'm doing and how I'm schooling my daughter to come up is really important.
Right.
The second thing I always take with me is more in the workplace, which is, I can't tell you how many times I have sat in a meeting, or I've watched other women sit in a meeting or a board meeting and say something. And how many times have you heard a couple minutes later, someone else, a man, says the same thing, and you feel a little bit like, hey, didn't I just say that? Like,
Right.
100%. Why wasn't I acknowledged for that?
Yes.
And so I actually had an senior leader at my last firm who started doing something. He would, as soon as I said something, he would say, hey, Katie, that's a great point. And what it did was it gave a moment where people paused and they acknowledged what I'd said. And so I think there are very small things we can do in the workplace to ensure that everyone's voice is heard, especially women who may be a little quieter or maybe aren't as assertive in how they say what they're thinking.
Absolutely. Can't agree more. I can immediately recollect so many such instances with this.
And it's a small thing each of us can do. A man doesn't have to do it, a woman can do it. It's just giving space for the voices so that we get everyone's idea around the table.
Yes. Fantastic. Love it. I would like to know a little bit, know your perspective or your experience in mentorship. So have you had a mentor in your professional journey who's helped you? Or have you been a mentor to somebody, through all this, excellent journey and the examples you have had, and you could guide or coach somebody. So if you would like to share something on that.
Yeah, I have a little twist on mentorship that I think about, and this is something that someone sort of brought to me maybe 15 years ago, and I implemented in my life, which is they said, don't have one mentor, have a board of directors. What do you have as a CEO? Wow. You have a board of directors, right? Why do you have a board of directors? Because you have different facets of yourself and different challenges or opportunities you're thinking through. And one person probably can't give you that 360. And your board of directors oftentimes come from different places. As a CEO of a company, you have someone maybe who really knows technology, or someone who really knows go-to-market, or someone who is core to your audit processes. And it's the same in life, which is, who's the friend you walk with who gives you advice? Who's the person at work who gives you advice? And so I think it's really important that people not think of one mentor and the expectation of one person, but they start to think of who's that board that's going to support you when you have a tough decision or when you face a setback. And really be intentional about almost naming them like a CEO names their board,
right,
and then use them that way. And I think that's one of the things when people say mentorship, I always ask someone when they say to me, will you mentor me, is what can I bring to you?
Right.
Because it's one thing to have a relationship. It's another thing to know, like, can I help amplify you at work? Can I help advise you on a career transition? What is it that is my skill that I'm bringing to you? And that's what a board does. And so that's how I think about it.
Very, very interesting perspective. I think to gain a lot, and like you rightly pointed, every individual will bring something specific based on the requirement, what you're looking for. So basically customizing it and it's
and being intentional about it, not one off, but thinking of it like I meet with my board every month.
Right.
And then I have check-ins with our chairman, like
Right.
that's how we have to think about
Right.
using an advisory group around us to really help us go
Right.
forward, especially when we face adversity.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you for that. Katie, now as the CEO of IGT Solutions, and congratulations for completing 1 year. It just flew by, right? So what I would be very keen to know is what are the steps you are taking from representation of women at IGT, at leadership position, as well as in the broader industry, right? You have been a keynote speaker in various forums and have been talking about very critical topics. So how do you think now at this position you plan to contribute, or you're already doing that?
Yeah. So first of all, at IGT Solutions, I'm pretty proud that we have 47%
Right.
female representation. I do believe we should and must continue to push that needle at more senior levels.
Right.
I'm proud to be the first female board member of our company. But I think forums like this, where we actually get really practical advice, is one thing. I think second is I have a balanced scorecard. I've shared it with our organization where I'm managing the metric around gender diversity. And I think that's important too. I'm not one who says, you must hire a female for this role. I think we should be promoting skills and hiring the best person. But I do think we need to keep a perspective, which is many of our customers, and we're in the customer business, are women. And therefore it's important that we think about having an employee workforce that represents our customers. And I also believe in technology, this idea that different voices in debate do bring innovation. And therefore, gender is one of those attributes, and we have to promote that. And so whether it's visiting our locations and speaking in women's forums, whether it's this channel of women in technology, leveraging also our partners in the industry, or whether it's thinking about metrics that matter within our organization and then promoting those. And lastly, I think something that's really important to me is safety in the workplace.
Yeah.
So making sure that all the women at IGT Solutions or at any company feel safe and secure intellectually, physically, and all of those attributes.
Absolutely. I think I can't agree more. And I know we have work to do. So we've just started in some of the concrete steps we are taking, and I think it's a journey. And 100%. I think all of us will, continuously work towards that. So absolutely. I'm very interested to know, Katie, about how do you do it all right now? Personal life, professional life, being a mom, CEO, and several other commitments. Do you have let me say a regime or something that you follow? How do you compartmentalize and ensure that these are few things that you have to do?
Yeah.
Anything, just tips or tricks, whatever you would like to share.
Yeah, there's something that stayed with me when I was doing my MBA program at Columbia. A senior woman came from one of the management consulting firms. It happened to be McKinsey, and she pulled up a whiteboard, and here we were, these young women in the room, and she started by asking, what's important to you? It's a very simple question.
Yeah.
And different people threw out different things. I want to travel, I want, a big job, I want to be CEO, I want to have a family. And I think what I took from that moment, and I practiced religiously, is we all have different things that are important to us. So my regiment versus someone else, you can't compare. The second is it changes. every year it changes for me. And so I talk a lot about intentionality. Every year, right around New Year's, I sit down and I think, what is most important to me this year? So for example, last year when I was taking this job, my husband and I sat there and I said, I'm going all in. Right? I'm going to be on the road. I'm going to be meeting clients. I'm going to be with the teams. And that meant something else had to give. So always a choice for is a choice of not doing something else. And there are things that this year I haven't done that I used to enjoy doing. And so I think that, but personally making those choices and then being honest with the people around you. Like I said, with my husband, or it could be with your employer, your boss, here's where I am. And here's what I'm going to focus on. And hold yourself to that. You know, some people color code their calendars, some people, there's different mechanisms for doing it, but I think it's just the intentional choice. Right. And deciding, is it once a year like it is for me? Is it every month that you take that moment? You know, maybe there's so much going on in your life, it has to be more frequent, but you have to make that decision and then you have to live with it. And if where you are and what you're doing can't accommodate that, then you have to be authentic to that and you have to make a decision to do something else. And that's, I think, the most important thing I always say to women or men is be honest to where you are in your life, make those choices, and then don't shy away from them, you know? So hopefully that answers it.
Absolutely, absolutely wonderful. This is so exciting, Katie. I just want to switch gears a little bit and 3-4 spontaneous answers that I look forward from you. How do you de-stress?
How do I de-stress? You know, two things that I do. Number one, to be honest, as I've gotten older, I don't even think of it as stress. I actually get a lot of energy from challenge. Like it's a mindset shift, right? Like when things are hard and you have to solve them, everyone has that momentary step back where you're like, you know, and then for me, the energy I get from being like, okay, let's bounce back. And it's something I hire for, which is resilience, right? It's grit. It's those things. Right. So that mindset is something that's just everywhere and every day for me. And it's what I do. The second is, I mean, you've said it, I'm a fitness runner freak. And I find getting on the treadmill, giving myself that space from whatever I'm tackling, listening to a podcast, learning something really brings me back and grounds me. So those are two things that I sort of do almost every day. Yeah.
Wow, fabulous, fabulous. Who is your role model?
Oh, I mean, I've talked about people I admire like Carla Harris, but my role model really was my dad, you know, and why I'll very quickly say, he was a consummate mentor in many ways to so many people. And at his funeral, when people stood up and talked, they didn't talk about the fact that he had a very senior position at a very big bank. They really talked about how he had coached them. And that for me was like a pivotal shift in my life to say, how can I do that for others? So yeah, my dad.
Which book are you reading right now, or any book that you would like to recommend to other women colleagues?
Okay. So from like a leadership book perspective, I would definitely encourage everyone to read the book Grit. And I think that's an important one because it speaks to those attributes of purpose and resilience. And it also really speaks to, and I think this is important, we're not necessarily born smart. We can work on these things and we can get better. It's that intentional, like, keep working, know your North Star. But in terms of a book I'm reading right now, I bought my husband for Christmas. He gets a new book every month sent to him. And I just read a mystery novel. I read a lot of mystery novels. I love that, piecing it together. Yeah.
Lovely, lovely. Okay. And my last question, if not CEO, if not in tech or consulting, any alternate career, what would be Katie doing otherwise?
Yeah. During COVID, we had a lot of time at home, and I have a teenage daughter, and we watched a lot of cooking shows and the Great British Baking Show, and we cooked a lot. And I think if I had the skills and the time, I would love to be a chef. Yeah.
Oh, wow, really? Okay, I never thought that coming.
I find it very calming, and maybe it's the Great British Baking Show. My husband would always say, have you guys seen that episode already? It's, you know, sourdough starters, and I would think to myself, I could watch it all day long.
Fantastic, fantastic, Katie. Thank you.
Thank you.
This was fun. This was very energizing and very inspiring. It's always, always lovely to talk to you and get inspired. And thank you.
No, and thank you, Shreya, for both hosting this, because I think it's very important, but second, for all the work you're doing on our values. I think culture ultimately underpins how people are successful in an organization. So thank you.
Thank you.